Welcome to No Veil Recovery. This is a recovery podcast. I am Jazz and this is Jeremy.
Hey.
Welcome, Jeremy. This show today is a bit about codependency in childhood and kind of where we're going to talk about the link of that childhood and codependency and unhealthiness in relationships. And I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I'm also recovering from codependency. And I've met Jeremy in a room for working on codependency as well. So, Jeremy, could you tell me what was it like? What brought you to a room for codependency? Like, how do you even find that? Like, what sort of like pain were you in, if you were in pain, where you were like, or problem you were trying to solve, where like codependency is a hard thing to find and heal from. So I'm just wondering like how you got to a room, what brought you to a room, if you want to start there. What do you think?
Yeah, no, great question. So I found myself with numerous different partners, but in the same relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Constantly, only in hindsight do I realize this now, but going through the process of being with the same type of person and ending up in the same relationships, and just realizing that I was a caretaker.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is all hindsight, because in that moment, or when one relationship would fail, I'd move to the next. It wasn't like in those moments I was realizing like, oh, I'm a caretaker. So it kind of got to a point where the last relationship that I was in before attending my first codependency meeting, I actually was going to a counselor because I took the breakup very harshly.
Mm-hmm.
And I started wanting to know, what was I doing wrong in these relationships, instead of constantly blaming the other person,
right,
and just putting it all on them. They did this, they did that, but I had a moment of reflection, and I was like, hey, well, it takes two people to have a relationship. What am I doing wrong? So I went to a counselor, and maybe after my third or fourth session, they actually brought up the idea of attending a codependency meeting.
right.
And from there, I was interested. Clearly, I went to a counselor to seek this. But after they mentioned that, I actually started attending meetings, and that's kind of what brought me to my first CODA meeting.
That's so cool. And I've heard of therapists recommending this program, this 12-step program about codependency. And I think that's so great. So that's cool that you got recommended that, because you could have as easily not got recommended that. And like, how many years have you been going to these rooms?
Oh, gosh. I think
like quite a few.
Yeah, so I've been a member since 2018.
Okay. Wow. So
Yeah.
8 years.
Yeah, I did my first full year and then stopped for a while because COVID got in the way. Yes.
Yeah. Well, the birth of Zoom.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
The digital age had arrived.
Yes. Some good things have come from that. So you've been kind of, and then there was a break there. So then you came back to the codependency rooms, and then when you were there, like, I can relate with that too. Like, I actually went to this 12-step meeting to save a relationship. I wanted to desperately save this relationship so bad, and I ended up finding myself in those rooms and developing a relationship with myself that I did not have before. But I can relate with the part where you said that you were trying to see what your part was, because when I came to one of these rooms, I was just like crazy, like really controlling, like really messed up, and I was like, I got to figure out myself. So if I clean up everything on my side, then we'll be able to see what's on their side. And, eventually the relationship didn't work out, but I feel like have turned inside out with that program. And I'm really grateful for that program. And I also learned a lot about like how it's linked, like codependency is like linked with childhood. So now you don't come from any other 12-step programs. Like I come from other 12-step programs. I used to have substance abuse. And then this other program really helped me like expand my knowledge on all my emotional and psychological stuff that I need to heal from. So I found some links with childhood by going to these rooms. So do you have anything like that? Like what was how is codependency related to your childhood and related to your relationships?
Oh yeah. Whew.
There's the big one.
Yeah, I'm like, oh,
Brace
okay.
yourself.
So it's interesting because I think like many people who find themselves in a room for support with codependency, they initially come there because of a either falling out or,
Mm-hmm.
as you mentioned, trying to want to repair a intimate relationship with a partner.
Right.
That's how I found it. That's how many of the people I've spoken with who attend those meetings find it. But just as you mentioned, it is a deeply rooted issue that stems from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I, practiced recovery and, dove into myself and reflected and kind of dissected who I am and my upbringing, I do realize that my codependency stems from voids in my inner child
Mm-hmm.
and longing. And it's kind of multifaceted because it's two parts. There's things in my childhood that were missing that I was longing for in intimate partners. So I developed, part of my codependency comes from trying to fill, the needs and the wants that I yearned for as a young child, but also, observing how my family dynamic was, kind of also brought that to more light because as an older adult now, I'm able to witness and look back on my parents' relationship and see how they were codependent. And it's like it's generational trauma is what it really is. And you know their parents were codependent and so on, and it's a trickle down
Until
effect.
someone stops.
Yes, exactly. So it's two sides of the same coin. It was learned behavior, and it was self-preservation from trying to find things that I was lacking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a sad. Like, thanks for that. That word longing. Like craving something or like a loss of something. You didn't get something from childhood, and then it's like as a child, like you're devastated. You don't know what to do with that devastation. You don't understand. And I felt like that too. Like I needed something. I didn't know what I needed. And then I just like kind of grew up into being this adult trying to find that thing I needed. And then it would show up like I'd be looking for that to fill that need in intimate relationships. And all relationships, like my codependency goes in all my relationships, but it kind of showed up the most in my intimate relationships. And it is definitely for me too the thing that brought me to a room for codependency. And it's like they talk a lot about like reparenting, like that inner child. And it's almost like, I know for me, the work I'm doing, part of the work I'm doing, like, I'm always recovering. I'm never like cured. It's just that like, I acknowledge the losses that I had from childhood, and I work with others to acknowledge that loss. And basically am more loving to myself now as an adult. And I find that it helps me be more loving and better in my relationships, right? Because it's almost like I am protecting and loving that child that didn't maybe get that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And to go on a little further, before I learned this stuff, like this recovery stuff, I basically didn't know how to protect that inner child or myself. So because I had an unhealthy way of what love was, I would like go into these relationships and I would be like with partners that were not very nice to me or were toxic or abusive or, you know, and then I'd be like in that pattern like you're talking about. I'd be like in the same different person, the same relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's quite the discovery. Like I just went to the go to like my first program for substance abuse. I didn't know there was anything after that or other stuff more in depth. And but this stuff is like, yeah, very interesting, the codependency work and how that works. So yeah. Yeah.
I think you nailed it. Just like, dating different versions of the same relationship,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Until there's a change made. So I know a bit about your story. I'm going to bring it up. So you have a few, like what I know about you is that you grew up, there was substance abuse in the home, or you grew up with that, like it was a bit chaotic. Like, what was that? What was it like to be a child for you? Like, Jeremy, like, what were your interpretations of love? And you know what I mean? Like, do you want to like touch on that a little?
Yeah, sure. And something it's interesting to bring this up because it's kind of a realization that I've had lately is that growing up really confused me on what love was. Because, there was a lot of words of encouragement and there was a lot of open communication about, my parents never held back saying that they loved me, which
Mine too.
which was
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
I know that there's people out there who don't get that from their parents. That must be really harsh.
Yeah.
But there was addiction present throughout my entire childhood. First, my dad struggled with alcoholism for most of my life up into my early 20s. And then, for a brief period between, early adolescence and later stage teenager, there was a lot of hard substance abuse within my immediate family. My dad, my sister, my mom, they were all using heavy, hard drugs. And, you know, it happened at a very pivotal point in my life because there was addiction present when I was a young child with the alcoholism. But when I became, 12, 13, 14, so on, you're starting to develop a different sense of yourself. You're kind of growing in, you're losing the innocence of the world, and you're starting to realize, that there is these problems out there, and you're starting to feel bigger feelings such as embarrassment and self-esteem issues, and your brain is maturing or trying to become an adult before your level to mature and catch up is there. So when the substance abuse was happening, it was scary. It was fearful, like it went from being this loving environment to having strangers in my house that I didn't know. And it became like, almost like, it's weird because it became like this, I don't want to exaggerate, but it became like, a drug shack where you still were told that you were loved. And so it really confused me because it's like, if you're saying these things, we love you, we care about you, then why are you allowing these things to be in our life? Which and that definitely played into my codependency growing up, because I found myself with partners who would say, you know, I love you, I care about you, but then their actions wouldn't follow.
Mm.
And so, you know, I hope I place this in the right way, but
You're doing good.
codependency is you're kind of dating your family of origin is what's happening.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're until you can identify these auto responses that you're just dating the thing, or finding yourself in relationships with the flaws of your childhood from your upbringing.
Mm-hmm. That's why I think that childhood healing is becoming more of a topic because people are finding that link, that connection. And do you think like, yeah, like working on childhood trauma definitely has an impact on your relationships? Hey, like, do you think that really plays a role?
Oh,
Like it's improved your, like you're not in the same cycle anymore.
no, and I am now with an amazing partner,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm sure that's honestly, I attribute that to my recovery process, because I have shifted my mindset and what I was looking for in life from, you know, stumbling in the same patterns to now looking for a healthy alternative, because I had done recovery work to heal those childhood wounds. So I no longer was stuck in that, auto response. I was now starting to
Mm-hmm.
live instead of
Mm-hmm.
just kind of cruising through and surviving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. It's so cool to get out of that survival mode and be aware of that and like just have some traction in a different direction,
For sure.
like out of that cycle into something a little bit new. And like that's uncomfortable and awkward, but you do get better at being in the right side of things. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. That's so great. Yeah, it's a long journey to it's a real in-depth type of recovery. I think codependency work isn't something to like, get sober and clean and jump into right away. It's something to kind of get into if you have like some time under your belt, if you are an addict alcoholic. And then codependency recovery is like it's open to everyone, right? Like anyone that has like childhood grows up with like moderate to severe childhood dysfunction of any kind, and then how that affects you and plays out, like that recovery really helps you with having healthy and loving relationships. And not just like, I know for me, like my intimate relationships are different now. It's different now for me, but all my relationships have changed, like work ones, my family of origin relationships, like and I think like as my relationships have gotten healthier, it somehow has made my whole life better. Like I don't know if that's for like the same for you, but like
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
It's that ripple effect, right? Like once
Mm-hmm.
you start healing yourself, then it flows into other things. And first and foremost, we are social creatures, and a lot of us are looking to build lives with other people. So, the ripple effect after healing ourselves is the ones closest to us. And as, adults, um, that next relationship is usually an intimate relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then it trickles out, outward towards, family, and then friends. And like you mentioned, like colleagues, and, even just people you have on the streets, meet on the streets, or, your day to day interactions. Like you're just able to communicate better in a more healthy way, be more
Mm-hmm.
present.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's very interesting. You know, you nailed it, because that's one thing that whenever I will speak to somebody and they get curious about codependent recovery,
Mm-hmm.
um, I say exactly that. Like first, it was there for my intimate relationship and healing myself, and now it just affects all relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, in a good way. Something that I wanted to go back to was like how you were talking about the love that you learned when you were younger, and like how people were very verbal about the love, but then the actions didn't match. And like I had that same experience, like similar. And where I was like, it's almost like I couldn't understand the affection because it was like a lot of love saying, but then get treated a different way. And so I'd go into my intimate relationships trying to make sense of the chaos, even though they might have
Yes.
said like, hey, I'm going to change, or I do love you, and like we have a great life, and like all these things. Like I would always want to believe it, but then was always so conflicted with, well, why didn't you do the thing you said, or show up at the time you said, or like, why are you MIA, or like, why are you going back? Like, the trust just kept getting broken. And I grew up with a lot of that trust getting broken. And, you know, that is, that's a sensitive thing to heal, and when you said that, I was thinking like, wow, like at what point does a child like start questioning their reality? Like, it's almost like you had this moment of like, well, why is this like this? Like, you start weighing it out. And I can really remember that too, you know? Anyways, that's just like a little thought I had there where it's like, I feel like for the sake of children today, or like what would be, how I might try to do it differently. And what could be important is that like, it's like make it healthy with your kids, but like when that questioning happens, like that's why consistency is so important. It's like to have it all align and match, and like um explaining to the child that what's happening, have that, so they're not left to their own thoughts of why is it like that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like it's almost like where the start of the damage happens.
It's so true.
Right?
And
And it compiles.
you put it so well, like, because as children, going through that circumstance, you don't have the cognitive abilities to realize that it's happening.
Right.
So you're just being shaped and developed by it, going through the motions, forming your own existence, but nobody is there to tell you like that's wrong.
Yeah, don't think like that.
Yeah, or like,
you just start, yeah.
That is your perception of the world because that's what you're taking in, and those are the reels, that you're developing with the narratives. And so, circling back, when I finally got to a point where I started to question my actions in relationships, it wasn't so much of being like how I was raised was wrong,
Right.
but it was like a little kind of insight being like, what am I doing wrong? And then, like what is, how do I keep doing this? Like, why do, at some point, if you kept stubbing your foot on the same piece of furniture, you'd move it because you'd realize like there's something I'm doing wrong here. It's maybe in the wrong place. Yeah. So, when I found myself at the, counselor kind of questioning, what am I participating into the relationship and my contributions? And it led me to, my first codependency meeting. That's where the growing started to really happen, because it was insights of like, oh my gosh, how can you fix what you don't know is broken? And as a child, you don't realize that that's wrong. So
right, and then you can just grow up with that same kind of blindness, thinking this is the way it always was, this is the way I am, and it's like that blanket of denial. And innocently, you just don't know, until there's enough pain where you question that pain, and why is it always messed up every time?
Exactly.
Yeah. And yeah, like, not to blame my parents either or anything like that. This is not what this is about. Like, it's just like that. It's a really fragile time and window when the brain is just making decisions without, if there isn't that like direction or understanding, it's just going to make it can just make a dysfunctional string of information, and then boom, that's it there for life. And then we know how hard it is to change an adult's brain. It's almost impossible. Like it takes years of work to rewire that kind of deeply rooted issues, right? So yeah, it's Do you think that, like, because you're a parent now, do you find like what you're learning from this recovery is affecting your parent style?
Yes.
I mean, he's still so young.
No, it's true because, you know, my personal belief is, every generation needs to be better than the next,
Yeah. And
and
that's progress.
it is.
Right? Progress over perfection.
And like, again, we're not here to bash our parents.
No.
There was successes in their flaws, and in their losses there was victories as well, and they did the best they could because just as I had to get to a point where I needed to realize work on myself. I didn't know how to fix what I didn't know was broken. Just so did they. They tried the best with the tools they had. So
right, yeah.
And as an adult now, I have to be accountable for my own actions, even though things took place out of my control. I have to own that now. And work on that. And it's hard to grow when you're blaming.
Yeah.
So
you can't.
Exactly. They're two opposing forces.
Yeah.
So despite wanting to have moments of resentment and so on towards them, I am accountable for my own actions and my being as a person now. And so having my son has been the most amazing experience of my life.
Agreed. Me too.
He is.
I have 4 sons.
Lucky.
Oh.
He is.
I think that, but not everybody else does.
Fair enough.
But yeah, you have your son.
And he has forced me to grow up in ways that I never even realized I could.
100%.
Yeah.
He will forever.
For sure. And a really neat thing that happens is when I see him, it's like I'm looking at a younger version of myself. I do see physical characteristics of myself in him, and I see little quirky characteristics. He's quite young, but he's still, he's developing that personality. And it really reinforces the ability to reparent my inner child, because now it's not just within me. Like it's like there's a physical manifestation of myself in front of me, growing, going through the motions that, all humans do. But now I get to be involved in this life, his life. And I'm not saying by any means I'm going to do a perfect job. Just as my parents had their successes and flaws, I'm going to have that as well. But the things that matter the most to me, or what I've learned from codependency, I can practice distilling that in him and be that different change. And it reinforces me and reminds me to like reparent my inner self. Because if I can love on a version of me that's external, my son, I can present myself with that same love. So it really helps, because before him, it was really difficult to parent my inner child, because it was, it was in my head, and it was so bottled up with the rest of reality that goes on.
Right. And it's so much easier to have a fight with yourself in your own head.
Yes.
Right. And get away with it. You can let yourself off the hook all the time. Right. And I like that, like with your son, like it's almost reinforcing a change in you, or you're able to see it better. Right. It makes it more real. Yeah.
For sure. And as you mentioned, like the consistency is huge, because I see moments where I will say loving, endearing things to him, and then I will go to do actions that are contradictory to that. And then it's like that light bulb moment, like, hey, no,
you're being like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, no, you have to be better. Like, I have to be better for myself, for him, because, I understand the large impact it had on me, and I don't want to distill that in him. And so you have to be just consistent, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and there's only so much you can control. I'm sure they're going to find things to blame. Like, I'll probably be blamed for being a single mom. Why did you have to be a single mom our whole lives? So like, I feel like there's always going to be a bit of dysfunction, but I think that every generation there's some progress, hopefully, with getting away from that. Like I know for my folks, it was like some of their backgrounds, like I won't say who or whatever, but like was from like raging alcoholics and whatever. So we didn't have booze in the home. So they were always like we don't have like, there was just like this painted picture that it's great because there's no booze, but then it was like it was all the alcoholic traits and problems and the chaos and the, like just the unpredictability and the walking on eggshells and yeah. So that was like very confusing for love for me when I was younger, and I know for me, like as a parent now, I mean, I have compassion for my parents, but it's hard. You can't be perfect. Like I catch myself too sometimes doing stuff. I get mad. My big character defect is getting mad. Like I really get hard on myself for that. But every year I'm less mad.
That's progress.
So it's like I'm not going backwards. I am going forwards, but it's a little hard.
Every
sometimes.
New Year's resolution's the same, hey?
Yeah.
Less anger.
Just don't yell at the kids. Well, anything else you'd like to add to this show today about like codependency? Because you're not an addict, but you were raised around addicts and have that chaotic kind of background there. So yeah, because we get people that are from all walks of life in these rooms trying to get emotionally, say, I think it's like people getting emotionally available, sober, regulated, and you don't really know that you have childhood issues until you go to those rooms, would you say?
You nailed it.
Yeah.
I remember hearing that for the first time in a room about reparenting your inner child. And that gave me goosebumps and started to bring up tears because I was just, you hear something so profound for the first time. I was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of
that deep?
Yeah,
that far?
Yeah, and also I felt exhausted in that moment too because I was like, oh, there's so much more to be done.
It's overwhelming.
It is. Yeah.
That's why it's progress.
And I think the most difficult and the most beautiful part of recovery is that you're not going to wake up one day or attend your last meeting and be like, that's it, I'm recovered. Like as much as like
cancer free.
Yeah, there's not really exactly. There's not really an end point. We, as you mentioned, we're progressing every day. We're never gonna perfect it. We're gonna stumble, we're gonna have hiccups. And it's frustrating at moments, especially when you start out, to know that like there is really no end to this program.
Yeah,
to these
you're going to turn people away now.
Yeah. but the frustrating part is also the beautiful part because we get to continuously grow and you learn new things. We don't get to become to a point where we just become stagnant in our growth and recovery. I think it's quite an ignorant thing to ever think like, hey, that's it, I've nailed it, I've perfected this. Like,
right, there's no destination really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It teaches you that like the journey.
And like, to be fair, I think people come in there with that destination in mind, like I'm going to fix the problem.
Yes.
And it's true. It's like I came in there, I'm going to fix the marriage, I'm going to fix this, like I'm a fixer. And I came in and I learned all this other stuff about myself, which is great. And but it's like that you come in and it's like that harsh, hard on yourself, shame-based kind of attitude. And like for me in the program, I've just noticed like that harshness has really softened. And I was just like really hard for so long, protecting myself and being controlling. And this program, like, it's just taught me how to almost be more in my feminine energy, because people have always told me I'm too rough my whole life. But in that sense, it's just like, I think what this is getting out of survival mode and starting to like learn how to live.
For sure.
Like it's a total roadmap, like changing from one behavior to the next and like seeing that I do this and I could do this. So it's like that's like, I love that about that program. You can really track it. So yeah, So I think I'm going to wrap us up there.
Perfect.
Good to go. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for watching our show, and we hope you come to the next one. Bye.
See ya.